Chapter 37, Hellscape. The first 26 years, I managed to stay clear of roving bands of armed Sigma 4s. I spent most nights in densely wooded areas. Occasionally, I would sleep in some friendly farmer's barn. The farmers, for the most part, didn't take sides. The ones that did were kind enough to advertise their leanings. The ones partial to the alpha beta gangs flew purple flags in their front yards, while Omega Gamma adherents flew orange flags. I lived off mostly wild berries and nuts. Sometimes the farmer's wife might invite me in for a home-cooked meal. Centauri DNA is the most amazing thing. It can take almost any foodstuff and multiply its value 1,000-fold. I was never lacking for energy as long as I got a good night's sleep. The cattle were few and far between. What few I ran into were mostly beef cattle, and they were on the scrawny side. In desperation, the farmers had turned to sheep as alternative livestock. But oftentimes their flocks would be raided by armed gangs from either side, and the farmers would be helpless against them. In my 27th year on Sigma, I made a rookie TPE mistake. It was unforgivable, and in normal times, I would have been kicked out of the TPE Corps. For 2 weeks, I had been hiking in a desert area, and my food and water ingestion had been minimal. I came upon an oasis where I was at least able to saturate my body's H2O demands, and then I made my mistake, thankfully not a fatal one. I fell asleep under a palm tree. It was broad daylight. Next thing I know, I'm being rudely awakened, and when I opened my eyes, I was staring at the barrel of an AK-47,000. I was promptly tied up, blindfolded, and taken to what I presumed to be one of the other gang's headquarters, where I was placed in a chair, still tied up, but no longer blindfolded. Standing menacingly in front of me was a man of medium height wearing a purple beret. I guess that meant he was with the Alpha Betas. Khaki shirt and pants and a flamboyant mustache. I am Captain Hernando Chad. Who are you and what are you doing in Alpha Beta controlled territory? Don't you know that is illegal? I have nothing to hide. My name is Nick Nearcastle and I'm checking on cows. He slapped me. I'll ask you again, why are you here? Checking on cows. He slapped me again and ordered one of his flunkies waterboard him, which they did. I didn't say anything out loud, but the waterboarding experience was quite refreshing after 2 weeks in the hot desert. I think it was finally sinking in that torture wouldn't work on me. Captain Chad cried out, "Take him to solitary confinement." As I was being escorted from the room, I said, "I was sorry to hear about some of your family." He looked both stunned and furious. "What do you mean by that insolent remark? I understand that the Omega Gammas have been hanging Chads." Chapter 38, Zest for Life. Strange as it may sound, I was looking forward to solitary confinement. I needed some time to think, and as the discerning reader would know, I could escape at any time I wanted to using the SPNV, which was and was still not in my possession. Since the SPNV does not exist in our current space-time continuum, it is not detectable by any detecting device that is a part of our space-time continuum. And since everything that we know, see, and touch belongs to our current space-time continuum, then the SPNV, as it is currently constituted, or not constituted, is forever hidden from the powers that be in the current space-time continuum. Got it? On the other hand, I might just use the SPNV, especially if this solitary confinement gig plays out too long. I'm initially setting a limit of 10 years, but we'll see how it goes. It turns out I stayed in solitary confinement for almost 12 years. The first 11 years breezed by, but beginning at the start of the 12th year, I started getting a little antsy. To be honest, I was on the verge of reactivating the SPNV when the guard walked in and said, "Okay, Nearcastle, stand up. I'm taking you to see the prison commandant." Was another torture session in store? Maybe they would tickle my toes with a feather. He put me in handcuffs and we headed to the commandant's office. Hernando Chad was no longer commandant of the prison. He had been caught with his hands in the proverbial cookie jar. There really did turn out to be a hanging Chad. The new commandant was Colonel Isimo Francisco Bay. He had only been commandant for a few months, but the guards seemed to think he was an improvement over Chad. Take that as you will. Improvement is an imprecise and abstract term in the revolutionary biz. As we were nearing Bay's office, we heard laughter. Wisps of smoke were drifting out of the open door. A rather pleasant aroma filled my nostrils. Was that? No, it couldn't be. But it was. I was smelling Cuban cigars. When we walked into the room, two men were sitting at a table. One was Colonel Isimo Francisco Bay, and the other, Frank Fontaine, benevolent dictator. Chapter 39, Merchant of Space. Colonel Isimo Bay spoke to the guard recruiting me. Take the handcuffs off of that man immediately. Then he spoke to me. Please, Mr. Nearcastle, won't you have a seat? Call me Nick. I sat down. What was going on here? Cigar, Nick? He picked up the box. No thanks, I don't smoke. Bay continued. Nick, I have a funny story to tell you. I think you'll have a good laugh when you hear it. I'm all ears. Bay was an amiable old cuss, but was he playing some sort of game? Colonel Isimo Bay looked over at Frick, then back at me and said, I understand you and Senor Fontaine know each other. We've met a couple of times. Guess what? And this is the funny part. I asked Senor Fontaine what you did. You know what he told me? He told you I check on cows. I made a point of speaking very clearly. That's right. Hey, isn't that funny? You're exactly what you told us you were. Do you know how rare that is? Someone telling the truth? Bay blew a ring of smoke into the air. I smiled. Does that mean I'm free to go? Yes, but only on one condition. You must leave Sigma 4 immediately. You must realize if this gets out to the public, it will be a major embarrassment to our leader. And even though I had nothing to do with it, it will probably be my end also. I couldn't resist saying, and your enemies would probably enjoy rubbing it in. Bay looked gloomy. That too. When we got outside the prison, I asked Frick how he got to Sigma 4. It was too primitive to have its own spaceport. I say this with gratitude, mind you, but I've made so much money from pipe tobacco and Cuban cigar sales that I was able to buy a sweet little Star Cruiser. We landed on an open field a couple of miles west of the prison. I just said, nice. It seems that benevolent dictators have all the luck. Frank anticipated my next question. Of course, the Syrians do all the transporting of the pipe tobacco and cigars. I use the Star Cruiser to visit current customers, make sure they're happy, and also, of course, to develop new accounts. That's why I've been on Sigma 4 for the past week. How did you know about my situation? I met a couple of brothers from Earth at the Cosmic Shuffleboard Convention on Simplan A a few years back. I mentioned I was a good friend with one person from Earth, and they asked me who it was. When I said your name, they told me about the last time they saw you on Sigma 4, about 30 years or so ago, as they could best recall. I think their names were Spock in Colorado, or something like that. Nimoy in Nebraska, Shumptious. They're responsible for introducing shuffleboard to this section of the galaxy. Sounds like they're doing well if they're holding shuffleboard conventions and in the Centauri system of all places. Are the croquet folks upset? No, they love shuffleboard too. It's the rage of the universe.